So the, oh, wow. I'm gonna have to cut that one out. All right, so today, guys, we're gonna go over the problems in 6.2. And again, I'm gonna focus on using StatCrunch. And if you want to look at how to do those with the tables, flip over to Stephanie Gruber's slide. She does both. And again, so I'm gonna go ahead and focus on utilizing doing the problems in 6.2. And I also don't know that I actually covered this, but I noticed on the homework when I started working on it that one of the questions was what does Z, and then it also had to like the point 10. And that means that that's going to be to the right of. And so I don't know that I covered that as the best. And so I wanted to go ahead and indicate that. So let's just jump into some of the questions that we have. So the graphs, in this case, depicts the IQ scores of adults whose scores are normally distributed with a mean of 100. And so again, we have the mean is going to equal 100 and the standard deviation is going to be 50. So there's going to be the two critical points that we kind of need. Find the shaded area. So they gave us, in this case, this is going to be the amount where someone who has an IQ of 80. So it's not the percentage. So I'm going to open my StatsCrunch. And remember, I'm going to go ahead and go to stats. I'm going to go calculators, and then I'm going to also click on normal. Now, when you do, it'll automatically open the mean is going to be 0 and standard deviation of 1. So we're going to go ahead and change those to 100, and then we have a standard deviation of 15. Now, in this case, this is going to be right here, the percentiles, and it has to be a number between 0 and 1. And they want to know what happens if I have someone that's going to be higher than 80 in IQ. So no, keep in mind, remember 100 is half. So we're going to add at 100, you're to the left with 80, so you're going to be bigger than 50%. So with that, I'm going to plop in 80. I'm going to ask it to compute. And notice that I've got the wrong shaded area. I need to come over on this side. And so I'm going to change my inequality to the greater than that. And then I know that about 90% of our population have an IQ that's 80% or greater. Now, the second question that I had is going to also find the indicated IQ score. So in this case, you're given the 0.8, okay? And they say in this case, this one is the shaded area. So they're saying anything that's going to be greater than 0.8 or above. Now remember, our scores, and typically on your Z scores will only work on the left-hand side. But the nice thing about our score with using StatCrunch is that I can plug those in. Now keep in mind, let's say that I put 80 here. On this, I would always get an error because that's a probability. And remember, probability has to be between 0 and 1. And so if I am talking about my probability being 80 and I'm looking for what amount would be there, I need to go 0.8. So 0.8, and then I'm going to ask if compute is also, I'm going to look at it, it's going to be computed greater, and that means that I'm going to go to the left. And they're saying, what is the score? What X value would give me an 80% of the entire population? And that means my IQ score will be then 87.4% because I'll round that. I swear she told me around to 2 decimal places. I think a lot of times on your homework it's 2, and notice here it says 4. I think she probably ought to put 87.58. And so just be careful when you're inputting your answers into the computer to make sure you're rounding them to the right decimal place. Now, the second one, it says, look up the area that's going to be 99%, okay, in the table too, okay, or closest to 9. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and change my percent needs to be 99. I'm looking for the X. So in this case, I'm going to go 0.99, okay. I'm also going to go those values that are less than, and then I'm going to ask it to compute. And notice on this one that I have then my IQ of someone who has 134.95 would be in the 99th percentile, or that means that there would be most of my population, or almost 100% of my population is going to have an IQ of 134 or less. The last one, it says find the probability of a randomly selected adult that has an IQ greater than 131.5. So again, the 131.5 is going to be in this category, 131.5. And I want it to not be less than, I want it to be greater than. And so I'm going to ask it to compute. It's going to be that really tiny amount. And so my probability would be then the point 0.178 or about just a little more 1.78%. All right. We also can find probabilities that are between. So it says find the probability between 110 and 120. And so in this case, I'm going to click on the button on my Stats Crunch calculator of between, and then I can put my lower value. And so my lower value is going to be then 110. Whoops, not 111, 110. And my upper range is going to be 120. And then I'm going to ask it to compute. And so notice then I am, since I have a mean of 100, it's on the right of that. And so it's going to be then a percent of 0.1613. All right, find the first quartile. Now, when we talked about before with quartile, remember that breaks it down to the 25th percentile, okay? In which the IQ is separating between the bottom 25th percent and the top 75th percent. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and use our technology to find that out. And so we're going to need to go to the 0.25 is between compute. So in this case, in order to find out what the 0.25 is, I'm going to have to find my x. And so I'm going to go ahead and use that in my calculator. I'm going to go now the standard, and I'm going to go ahead and just find my number where my probability is 0.25. And I'm going to ask it to compute. I'm also going to go less than. That's what I should have done before. And let me try and change this to 0.25 again. Okay, now I'm going to compute. So my IQ then would be 89.95. If I also change, it says find the first quartile, which this IQ score separating the bottom 25th from the top 75th. So this would be the IQ of the person at the 25th percentile or percent. Okay, the next one, the University of Maryland Medical Center considers low birth rates to be those that are less than 5.5 or this many grams. The birth rates are normally distributed with a mean. Now, again, notice that I changed it to grams. So here's my mean. And here's my standard deviation of the 639. So that means I'm going to have to use then my X value for this. Okay, if a birth rate is randomly selected, what is the percentage of the births that are a low birth weight? In other words, I'm going to go ahead and plug that into my calculator. I'm going to change my mean to the 315, or whoops, 3,152.0 grams. And I have a standard deviation of 693. And then I want to go ahead and find out what the value for X that's going to be less than. Oops, I have it less than. And I'm going to keep that as then the 24 to 95. And I'm going to ask it to compute. And so notice when I plug that in for my calculator, I get the answer for my percentages is 0.17, which indicates then over on my homework that it's going to be then 17.11%. Okay, find the weight considered to be significantly low using the criteria of the weight and the probability of the 0.05 or less. So again, if I look for the weight, I'm looking for the weight. So I'm looking for the X value that's going to be less than would be considered low. So I'm looking for the 0.05. So I've got my mean and my standard deviation in there, and I'm given then my probability of 0.05. And I'm going to be looking for the area that is going to be less than that. So let's compute it. And so notice then I get an amount that is going to be 0.05. I get it 1,000. I've got close, but I'm not quite there. Wonder if my technology doesn't up and okay, so I believe my number when I calculate this out is going to actually be then 2012.11. Now keep in mind, part of the reason I think we have some changes is that when you look this one up in the table, you're going to have to go values that you're going to estimate and you're going to have to go between and find a z-score. So I think that's probably why we're getting the variation. If you're doing your homework problem and you're struggling with it coming up close, make sure you shoot me a picture of what you have, and especially if you got this one and it kept telling you it was wrong and you had these two numbers, shoot me a picture and then we'll work it together.